Good evening, this is PM Express. My name is Martha Krenzel Aqua, and today we're talking money. Not just any money, but our cedi. And in 2007, our cedi reached a record low of 90 pesos. Now the cedi is trading at 3 cedi 40 pesos on the interbank foreign exchange. Now government has indicated that it will put in place measures to ensure that the marginal appreciation of the cedi is sustained. But how are we going to do this? I have concerns because this is our currency. When it weakens up, we suffer for the consequences. What are we going to do about this? I'm going to be joined by people who understand this and can explain to us to know what we need to do to sustain the cedi and the measures, whether they are sustainable in themselves. But for now, we'll get onto the phone lines and talk to Godfred Bokpin, who is the head of finance at the University of Ghana. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you doing, sir?
By God's grace, so we are doing very well. How about you too?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. What are your initial comments about the cedi's appreciation?
I think that to some extent is good news because no one is particularly happy if the cedi continues to depreciate beyond a certain level.
Okay.
But the rate of appreciation within 2 weeks is also a source of concern.
Why are you concerned? Is that not what we are looking for? We've been praying for it, in fact.
The cedi is as strong as the fundamentals of the economy. Okay. So any level of appreciation, we should be able to anchor it within the fundamentals of the economy. If we cannot, if the appreciation is not as a result of fundamental changes in the economy, then it's a source of concern because you'll be worried about its sustainability.
What are the fundamentals? Educate us on that.
Yes. When we talk about the fundamentals of the economy, one key component is the real sector. Okay. And the real sector here, we are talking about agriculture, we are talking about industry, and we are also talking about service. Okay. So if we were doing well along this line, then we will say that, yes, it has a future. But we can also understand the appreciation to be linked to some speculative activity in the market because the central bank did give the indication that they were going to inject money into the dollars into the economy. Okay, and for that reason, a certain level of speculative activity has moderated or disappeared to some extent. Okay. But the issue is that around this time, if you look at our history, this period actually favors our currency relative to the major trading currencies because demand pressures remain subdued because of slowdown in economic activity in terms of import activity. And actually that is the time that this form of sterilization or injection is also going on. So you realize that the concern is that, well, you have a limit to your international reserves. And then, so for how long can you continue injecting this thing? But the good news also is that the governor has also recognized that demand pressures are low, and for that reason, they are holding back in terms of the extent to which they will be doing these injections. What is also contributing to it is the fact that the IMF did pass Ghana government for the first review, and that in itself is also contributing to moderating expectations in the market, and the fact that perhaps in August we will get the next tranche of the inflows, and then we also expect that this will trigger inflows in terms of donor pledged funds, in terms of budgetary support as well, and then we are also banking our hope on the syndicated cocoa loan as well as the Eurobond. But the issue is that we have been there before. We have been there before. We have received this influence in the time past as well. But it didn't last us for that long because really, if you look at the nature of our economy, the major inflows into the economy are very much predictable. Okay. So you've also bought into this speculation because I heard the same thing you mentioned, the injection of the dollar to strengthen the cedi. Do you think that is all there is to it? Yeah, it's playing a part. It's playing a part. But we also know that around this time, demand usually is a bit tardy, okay? But we expect that demand pressures will pick up in the run-up to the Christmas. That is when people actually import in anticipation of Christmas. And that is when they will actually demand more dollars. So the question is about maybe trying to match the inflows at peak periods such that we can moderate the level of, let's say, the volatility or the level of depreciation. Even if we had all the fundamentals right, we still expect
which you doubt we have right.
Which we have the fundamentals of the economy.
And I'm asking, do you doubt we have it right?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't.
Okay.
We don't, and we don't. And the reason is also because of the ongoing energy crisis, which is a threat to the real sector of the economy. But let me also say that really, when the cedi depreciates, we don't have to just spend all our time crying.
What do we do?
That also confers some benefit on the economy.
Okay.
In terms of exports. When the cedi weakens, our export becomes cheaper.
Okay. So there is a good side to all that.
Yes, we expect that foreigners will demand more of our products relative to what is manufactured there. But our problem has been that our ability to benefit from weakening currency does not depend only on the exchange rate.
Okay.
So because of the unfavorable business environment that makes our industries highly uncompetitive, we are unable to benefit weakening currency. And we haven't done quite well in terms of even pursuing tourism. There is a whole literature about tourism-led economic growth. How do we strategize our tourism sector to capitalize on weakening currency?
We are not even developing the tourism sector to be able to capitalize on that.
Yes, to capitalize on that. So if we have a little strategy, I'm not saying that we haven't done well at all, but I think that the pace of reforms that we are pursuing, it says that we are a bit behind if we compare ourselves to our peers, because in a globalized environment. So you look at the energy crisis, you also look at the huge infrastructure deficit. Look what people go through just to go to work. Okay, it's as though life is divided equally along 3 levels. Spend 8 hours working, 8 hours sleeping, another 8 hours in traffic.
All right.
It's just it's not
so the infrastructures are not there, and perhaps that's why we can't sustain this.
The enabling environment that guarantees private sector leadership is not there. Now, when the cedi also depreciates, we also expect that the price of imported items will be expensive relative to locally manufactured ones or produced ones. But again, then when that happens, it means that you and I will switch from imported items to locally manufactured. But that is not happening in Ghana because, again, that switching does not, or that substitution does not depend only on the exchange rate.
Okay.
Because you have to hold other things constant. And really, in practice, you can't hold anything constant.
Okay.
So along all these lines, you realize that we are exposed. So indeed, it provides some respite. But at the end of the day, we are saying that there are concerns, and of course they are genuine about the sustainability. So if you look at the pace of the appreciation, the sustainability issue there is that can we sustain this appreciation?
That's my biggest concern for tonight.
For let's say for the foreseeable future, certainly not. Look, and when we are talking about sustainability, we are not talking about the next 2, 3, 4 months. We are talking about it running into next year. So assuming next year, and usually if you look at our history, during election year, in terms of donor inflows, they don't come in that much. And perhaps next year we might not be able to issue another Eurobond. And then so it will come down to just, let's say, the syndicated cocoa loan and then some few inflows. Then we realize that we will be exposed. So we are looking at saying that if the market is efficient, then we expect that the level of price changes would only reflect changes in the fundamentals of the economy or fundamental factors.
All right.
Okay. But if that is not there, then you are concerned because sterilization alone cannot hold the cedi going up for a long time. Because at the end of the day, you also want to balance the objective of building your international reserves as against your liquidity intervention in the foreign exchange market. Because the more you do these interventions, the more you are going to deplete your international reserves. But I think the managers of the economy, especially from the central bank, they are very much aware. What also gives some level of hope is the fact that we are beginning to see the much-needed fiscal discipline.
Okay. I want you to talk about control mechanisms we can put in place to sustain this. But I have been joined in the studio by Mr. Sidney Kingsley-Hayford. Thank you for coming.
Hey, Godfrey, mind your mouth.
Welcome
Thank you very much.
to the
coming
show.
From my heart, not from my mouth.
It's coming from your heart.
It's nice to have you both on PM Express.
Sure.
Mr. Kingsley-Hayford.
Yes, ma'am.
The city is doing very well.
Excellently well.
And I'm excited.
Are you?
Yes, I am. But I want to be able to sustain this excitement. I don't know how I will do it. I'll need your help to do that. What do you think about the appreciation so far? We've done well.
You know, honestly, I didn't realize that we could get any more mileage out of this topic. How many more times are we going to come on air to talk about the depreciation or the appreciation of the cedi?
We must find ways of sustaining it.
Must we? It can sustain itself.
Okay.
It can sustain itself instead of us interfering with it and trying to give it an artificial rate, which it is not. It can sustain itself. This is a matter of supply and demand.
Okay.
And all that you need to do is to allow the cedi to find its level based on the supporting productivity that we have in the economy.
No interventions?
It's not necessary. It's not necessary. If we have $20 million a day that we can spend, that the Bank of Ghana wants to inject in order to be able to prop up the cedi, why not put that $20 million into agricultural support?
Okay.
So we can beef up our agricultural base, and we will have enough food to eat at a price that we can afford, and we will all walk around happily paying our taxes because we are full.
I see. And we're not doing that. So
no, we're not
what
doing
we are
that.
doing is not sustainable.
Well, look, the calculations are very simple because it's basic arithmetic.
Okay.
If you decide you're going to put $20 million a day into an economy to prop up a currency, in 30 days you will need $600 million.
Wow.
All right? $600 million. If you do it for 3 months, you need $1.8 billion.
Do we have that much?
Exactly the point. We do not have that much. So you have to look at this injection in two ways. Yes, the Bank of Ghana is being very positive and saying, I am going to put in 20 million a day. It boosts confidence. People are more confident that if you do it and it's real, they will you also be a part of it. So immediately, you start showing signs that you are doing it.
Okay.
So everybody gets convinced that something will happen, and it moves a little. If after a period of time, you cannot sustain it, it will start going back down again.
Yes.
Let me look. It's a very, very simple financial analysis for anybody who is involved in looking at how they can make money out of the currency differences. Let's say 2 weeks ago, which is when this thing started, you had enough money and you bought $1,000 worth of currency because you wanted to keep the dollars. That would have cost you about 4,000 cedis because at that time it was about 4 to 1.
4 to 1, yes.
So you bought 4,000 cedis worth and you kept the dollars. Now suddenly you're finding that your dollars are not worth 4 cedis, they're only worth 3 cedis.
40%.
So you have $1,000. If you decide to dump it all into the market, you will get 3,000 cedis. Immediately you have lost 1,000 cedis.
Exactly.
So anybody who has any mind and is actually dabbling in forecasting the currency will definitely not be dumping their cedis today. Their dollars today. They'll wait because the swing is too fast, it's too quick. So they will wait. If they wait and they hold on to it, if they can afford to, that is, if they don't need the money and they can afford to, they will sit and wait. And if you don't carry on for the next 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, and keep it at this level, and the currency starts depreciating again, he can time it and wait until it is close to 4. And then if he still feels nervous that, hey, it might return, it might reverse again, he can then sell when he thinks that it has peaked, and then he'll recoup his dollars, or he might just, you know, wait and see if it'll go up a little bit. So in that arena, it is a business of buying and selling currency. Buying and selling currency is the same thing as buying and selling tomatoes. There's no difference. It's just that the commodity is different. Buying and selling money is no different in a marketplace.
In is making profit.
You're making a profit, yes. The price of a commodity is this at this price. Tomorrow it's a different price. If it is not going to deteriorate, if it's not going to spoil, like if it's tomatoes or oranges or something, which will spoil, then you are time bound to sell it at a particular time, or else you will lose the money. If not, then you hang on to it, because the dollar is not going to spoil, and nobody's going to change the dollar currency overnight. So you hold on to it. So what I see the Bank of Ghana doing is good. But with every economic intervention, there are always winners and there are losers. At this point in time, if you strengthen the cedi, then what you're doing is you're encouraging imports. Okay? Because now it is cheaper for people to go and buy goods from outside. When the currency is weaker, it becomes more expensive. So imports will dry out. And then you will not get the kind of, then you will start getting the import substitution that you want. But when the currency is this way, a lot more people are encouraged to export because they're going to get more dollars. It hurts the economy because in business, what you want is you want stability. All right, in your pricing. You and I go. You go to the shopping markets every day. You go to the local market. You go to the shopping malls. You go everywhere. You can go today to go and buy anything, a shirt, a pair of trousers, anything, and they'll tell you the price has changed. And it happens particularly with imported items. And don't forget, we are 80% an import economy. So just about everything that we are buying and using is imported. So you go tomorrow, you want to buy a piece of jewelry. Yesterday you went, the price was 250 cedis. Tomorrow you go, they say, oh, because of the currency, it's now 300 cedis. You have to make a choice. Maybe you've budgeted, you've been able to lobby your man or your woman, and they've agreed that you can spend 250 cedis on the necklace. You go and it's 300. You got to find the 50 from somewhere, or you can't have it. So in business, it's the same thing. When you go to buy your raw material, you go to buy your packaging, you go to pay for your distribution, you don't want the prices to be changing willy-nilly, because you also have an end product which you are selling. And you don't want to keep telling your customers every day that, oh, the price has gone up. We have become used to it in this country, that every time it's an excuse for people to say, oh, baby, so the market women have become very clever.
But it's unregulated, so they get away with this.
You can't regulate it. It's a market phenomenon. You cannot regulate it. The moment you start interfering in the pricing, you distort the economics of the whole portfolio, and you don't want to do that. As much as possible, you want production to go on at a very smooth level. So you want stability in your prices. So when your producer prices go up, when the price at which you are buying the commodities go up, then you have an issue. Okay? So it's the same way with the currency. You don't want the currency to be going up and down. I would rather the cedi was at 5 cedis to $1, and it stays
for how
there
long?
Forever.
Oh,
forever. Really? If it improves, then it should, wherever it sits, it settles, it should stay there and not keep going up and down. All right?
So you won't give it a period. For instance, every 2 years, if you see a marginal appreciation or depreciation, you don't mind. But you want forever at a stable rate?
I want a stable rate for as long as possible. If that is what...
Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible. It's very possible. Some currencies have stayed at their particular rate for a long time. Whenever they change for the better. Okay? And for us, you have to decide what is the better. All right? Is it better for us to have a weak currency, which therefore means that imports are less? Or do we have a strong currency, which therefore means that imports are more? Or do we have a situation where either way, the balance is okay and people are happy to trade at that level? As the Bank of Ghana is intervening today, as we all understand it, at what level is it going to accept that the currency should settle? What is going to be the rate at which we are going to predict and budget in any business situation. Is it going to be 3-1? Or is it going to go down to 2.5 and then it starts coming up again? Or is it going to go down to 2 and then it climbs up rapidly? We don't want that. We just want a simple, stable level and make do with that level.
Okay, Mr. Bokpin mentioned that we have infrastructure deficit, and that could be contributing to all that. It means if we don't have the infrastructure, it's going to affect. We talked about tourism. He mentioned tourism and the untapped potential of that one. We don't seem to be working around making this work for us, because if we know this and you know it and you've just mentioned to me, it means I'm aware of it, and those who are supposed to work with it cannot work around it, then I see a problem.
What he was addressing, he's bringing in elements of the infrastructure which can be fixed and should be fixed. Tourism is a good example. However, you see, there are so many different types of tourism. There's physical tourism, where you go to a country which is just beautiful. And you go in there, the beaches are gorgeous, the water is blue, it's cool, the temperature is nice. And that is an attraction in itself, a physical attraction. Greece has that. Spain has that. Some parts of Paris, of France have that. You go to the United States, there are wonderful, wonderful places you can go and see. Phenomena. Niagara Falls is there. I can go on and on. Ghana is not a beautiful country. No, physically, Ghana is not a beautiful country. Our biggest attraction, you disagree? Give me 3 places you would go and spend your holiday in Ghana, where you will know that you will go and you'll be very happy. Give me 3, I'm challenging you. Give me 3. You disagree with me.
You don't have to say Ghana is not a beautiful country. There's some beauty in Ghana, you know.
The what?
I disagree. Yeah,
I
won't give you the destinations I will go to, but there are beautiful destinations in Ghana. You don't have to. You probably, except that they are not developed.
You probably would say Kakum Park, please. And then where else?
Please.
Eh?
Please.
Ghana is physically not a naturally beautiful country. There are certain parts of Ghana. Is it
because we've not made efforts to develop it?
Yes. You see, if we develop it, it can be very, very nice. Okay. If you go to the Volta region, the eastern region, when you drive up and down those mountains, the Adaklu Mountains, the Gbeve Mountain, you go around that area, you will see such a picturesque view of places that you'll be so impressed. We have opportunity where there are mountainous ranges that could be developed, and you could have walkways up the mountain, you could have tramways going up and coming down. There's a lot that can be developed, all right? And the interesting part of it is that it does not have to be done with government money. Private sector will be more than happy to develop it and get it done. Absolutely. I'll give you a typical example of another form of tourism that we have. 2 weekends ago, I think, 2 weekends ago now, I went to go and see a play called Wogbe Jeke. It was performed by Chief Moomin and his team, 120, 150 cast. The script was written here in Ghana. The production was done here in Ghana. The costumes were done here in Ghana. The music was developed here in Ghana. All the actors were Ghanaians, from the beginning all the way through to the end. Absolutely no foreign participation. This were a group of people from the School of Performing Arts in Legon, and they came together and set it up. And it was all sponsored by Key Soap.
Okay.
All right?
Is Key Soap still in the system?
Key Soap is still in the system, still the biggest selling brand for Unilever. Okay? And they sponsored the event. It was a first-class international production, which can be taken anywhere across the world. And people who would come here, if they have the opportunity to watch a play like that, will be impressed. And they would come here. We started a program called Panafest, which we said we were going to do every 2 years, and it would be the attraction for all the African countries to come here and come and perform.
And those in the diaspora.
And those in the diaspora. Every summer, every other summer when they come, in fact, it will be an attraction for them to come every other summer, because they will take memories back of the cultural excellence and exuberance of this country. And that particular play, Wogbe Jeke, showcased just about every one of our regional dances, from the Dambai to the Takai to the Agbaja to Panlogo to Adowa. All of it was there, including the Kundum and everything. It was all available. Okay, so you had a chance within the 2.5-hour period to see just about every dance in the country. And it was wonderful. Okay? Now, if you do something like that every 2 years, you will certainly attract people. We have festivals throughout the whole year.
Yes.
From January through to December, there's a festival from one area, one region or the other.
I was amazed when I learned about that. Every month there is a festival.
So around that alone, you can develop a tourist arena. And that itself would create employment, because for you take a cast like what movement, he had 150 casts. That is 150 people who will be employed throughout the year, because a play like that can carry throughout a year and on. But here's the problem: if you decide you're going to stage a play in this country, you have a limited number of places where you can actually stage the play.
National Theatre.
The National Theatre, the International Conference Center. In terms of numbers, we are talking about numbers where you can put more than 500, maybe 1,000 people. In the national stadiums, you can, because you can seat quite a number of people there. Then you've got, in Kumasi, you've got the Kumasi Cultural Center. In Kufuria, you've got the Jackson Park. But you need a controlled environment where people will actually pay, so the actors and the performers can get money. Okay? So if you can't control the gate, you have a problem.
You're operating
so
at a loss.
All of these dynamics play. Okay? But let's not digress too far, because we brought the issue in because Godfred had brought in the issue that we need to develop other aspects of it. And yes, we do need to develop other aspects of it. Now, if we can broaden that range and we can create that kind of a market situation where people can actually go and get a product or a service and pay for it, and if they can afford to pay for it, then it starts making sense.
Do we have the purchasing power to pay for it?
We don't.
That's another problem.
Because the majority of our people don't have that purchasing power.
So they see what you're talking about as luxury, and they are not ready to even do that.
Absolutely.
At all. So what is the fundamental problem for us here? That our city appreciates, and we still are uncertain if we can sustain that one, because mechanisms we are putting in place are not going to help us. What's the fundamental problem?
I'll tell you, and I'll use a very, very typical example, which might seem like a little digression, but it won't. The problem we have is the market size. Okay? The market. With every business opportunity, the first thing you worry about is the market. Who is going to buy this product or this service that I am producing? Even as we sit here in the studio today, somebody is watching us. Okay? So we are providing a service, but there's a market out there who are prepared to buy the satellite dishes and pay for the boxes in order to be. And by the way, they shouldn't pay TV license. So we have that opportunity for everybody to be able to buy in, and you sell a service. You don't like my TV license thing? Can I just
hold it so I take a break so I can laugh it off, and then when we come back we'll continue.
And then you give me your 3 places that you want to visit in Ghana.
We pause here so I can laugh it off, and we come back and talk more on this issue. Welcome back. We're on PM Express, and I have Mr. Sidney Kingsley-Hayford with me here. And we're talking about the city and how far it has come. You were making a submission.
Okay.
Not about the TV license.
All right, we won't talk about TV license.
Okay.
But if it comes up somehow, if it's relevant.
No.
Okay. Okay, what I was saying was the market size is the critical thing. With every product and service, you want a market that can buy the product and service. Okay. And products and services going to have two pillars, the price and the quantity. Okay. All right? So you need to price it right. And you need to get the volumes right, so you don't have too much capacity, you don't have too much supply, and there's insufficient demand. It all boils down to it at the end of the day. So whichever way you look at it, you want to make sure that you have enough of a market to be able to take up your product. So with food, for example, if you don't grow enough food, then the price gets higher because you don't have enough supply into the marketplace. So for as long as we get enough people buying food, and we don't have a glut of food on the marketplace, we're all right. Okay. And right now, we have a situation where the price of commodities, the price of food is too high, and that is linked in with the price of the transport. And that is linked in with the price of the fuel.
It's not because we are not producing so much, but the transportation of the food we produce.
Yes. There's an additional cost. To bring the food from the farm gate to the urban sector where people can afford it is creating a nuisance because the pump prices are too high. And the pump prices are too high because the bulk distribution companies who are buying in the oil, the crude oil, are buying it using dollars.
So that's regulated.
And they need CDs. They sell in CDs. They need the dollars to be able to buy. So once the exchange rate, and that's your exchange rate problem, is high, then you have an issue because they can't afford to give it to the oil marketing companies at any cheaper rate than they have now. So you have a problem. So all of these these are fundamental problems. And all of these things are interlinked. All right? You can't just change one and expect everything else to work. You see, you've got to tackle the problem holistically. You have to look at it in its entirety and see what changes will affect what. And then try and correct the imperfections and hope that everything will level out automatically. So with every situation, you need to put in a little bit of effort in order to be able to prime the pump so the thing can start. And here's your classic problem. Take something like the electricity problem with the Dumsor issue.
Yes.
Everybody says the Dumsor issue is a matter of inadequate generation of energy, of supply.
That's what we've been told.
Yes. However, when you come down to it, it is not so much that as it is the fact that you cannot afford to pay for what is being spent to produce the energy. Okay?
As a consumer?
Yes. As a consumer, right now as we sit, we all know VRA generates the energy, Gridco delivers it or distributes it, and ECG sells it. Okay? And ultimately, somebody has to pay for that energy. You and I are consumers. We pay at the end of the period. So also does industry who use the electricity. They also pay. How? If the price at which I am expected to buy that electricity is not sufficient enough to recover the cost of the production, then you cannot carry on doing what you're doing. Okay? So by the time we get to the end consumer, which is you and me and industry, if the price is too low and therefore it is costing, say, for example, if it is costing VRA 10 million CDs a day to produce the energy, Gridco then also charges another 2 million.
12.
All right? Yeah, you've got 12. ECG then has to add a little bit of it so it can also pay its staff. So ECG then also adds 5. So now it's 17. But if the market, which is taking off the supply, cannot pay the 17 million back, then you cannot carry on the process. Because somebody in the supply chain, as we call it, is losing money and has to lose money. Because the end market consumer is not paying enough to recover the full cost of the delivery.
Whose fault is that?
It is the fault of government because government has decided to subsidize energy at a certain level. Government has decided that some people are so poor they can't pay for energy, and so government decides to subsidize it.
But they can use it.
They can use it, they can't pay for it. But government, therefore, has to make up the difference in order for the supply chain to be completely filled. Okay. And government is not paying its share. The biggest liability for ECG is government. Yeah. Government is not paying its bills because it doesn't have any money. Okay? As I sit down now, I can tell you that VRA, all right, is owed so much money by ECG, over 1 billion CDs, and ECG can't pay. And ECG can't pay because government can't pay. So once you have that chain broken, you have a problem.
Okay.
Okay? Now that's your classic market dynamic, which I'm trying to explain using something that is familiar to everybody. So unless and until we have a market that is big enough to take up everything that is supplied, you're not going to have any fulfillment in the delivery at the end of the day. And so the supply chain will be broken, and you find ourselves in this particular crisis. And therefore, VRA, which is supposed to generate more capacity, cannot do it because it doesn't have any money to be able to go out there and buy crude oil, buy gas, buy additional plants to be able to beef up the supply.
The whole system is messed up. Are we in crisis?
We've been in crisis for a very long time. The only reason why we survive...
How deep are we in this crisis this time round?
I think the only reason why it works is because Ghanaians are so tolerant of the issues. Okay? Somehow we are talking our way out of it. Okay? Conversations like this that we have, conversations on the radio, etc., is a good enough release valve that we can vent. And rather than going out to the streets to go and vent on the streets, we vent in the studios and we are able to make things work. But we are in a crisis, and our crisis is in the energy sector. It's in the power generation. It's in the DUMSO. That is where our crisis sits. And it sits there because government doesn't have the money to be able to do what is necessary.
You believe government doesn't have the money? Government has the money and putting it elsewhere.
Yes, government maybe has the money, but the priorities are misdirected. Okay? Now, we all say cynically that, oh, they are building up a war chest for the election campaign next year. And we probably will see that. Now, that is what will happen next year, where suddenly there will be enough money to do so many things, and the government will go around boasting about all the things that it was doing, saying that it was building up to that level, and now we are finally there. Well, hopefully the electorate will not be that ignorant this time round, and will be able to at least appreciate some of the nuances of what we are doing. But at the end of the day, the critical thing is whether or not all the various interventions and intermediations that we do can be sustained at the end of the day.
Yes.
If we can't sustain it and we think we can just jab at it and then it will work,
I feel we're doing
then we're
trial
wrong.
and error.
We are doing a lot of, well, no, you see, every time I come across this statement, I say, I tried, my instinct is to always say yes, but I know people in the ministries and in government, and I know that they are thinking and worrying and trying to strategize their way out of this. But there is something wrong with the decision-making process and the end execution, that somebody has to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and let's go ahead and do it. The only time that I saw something happen drastically was with the recent flood and the fire, and 152 people died, and then suddenly government is all upset and is trying to fix things. And then I think that, who was it? Was it Ayariga? Minister of Environmental Science and Innovation, went around trying to shut down some petrol stations, and he shut down 4, and then it stopped.
Oh, it's still ongoing across the country.
Where else?
Okay, they've been in Eastern region, Western, I know Ashanti also.
And the attack is on the petrol stations.
Except that they have not shut them down, but those who have problems have been given ultimatum timelines to rectify those problems. So aside the 4, they've not shut anybody, it's still going round. Last week they went round. And
you know that that is not the solution to the problem.
I know, exactly. But I know they're going round.
So they're trying to do something about that, and Mayor Kuvandapo is going around breaking people's shacks.
Of course.
And getting rid of illegal squatters. Fine. They are illegal, and there's nothing wrong with that. So this is now something that we are beginning now to set up and say that we can do and we should do, because we should have done it 10, 15 years ago. So we are now trying to fix that problem. And yet, that is not the solution to the problem. The solution to the whole thing. You see, Ghana has to sit back seriously and look at so many things that it can do without depending on donor support money, grant money, and money coming and borrowed money. There are things that we can fix.
Okay.
We can go to Parliament and we can enact the Freedom of Information Act. We don't need anybody's money to do that, but we are not doing it. We can sit down and we can look at our decentralization policy and we can correct it. And we don't need anybody's money. We can look at the District Assembly Common Fund and the way we distribute that money, and we can fix it. We don't need donor support. We can look at electoral reforms, and we don't need donor money to fix that.
As it stands, I think everything we're doing, we need donor support somehow before we can do it.
We say we need donor support, but when you come to it, we don't. Because this is something that you can sit down at a table in the ministry and you can decide this is what you're going to do, and you sign off and you get it done.
Okay.
But we have big problems, particularly with corruption and all that money going into private persons' pockets and not going to the benefit of the people of this country. And all that has to be corrected. We can look at the formal and the informal sector and figure out how we can formalize the informal sector. And we don't need donor money to do this.
All right. We'll take a break here, and then we'll come back and talk about the big problems we have on PM Express. Still on PM Express, my name is Martha Krentzel-Akwa, and I have Mr. Sidney Kisley-Hayford with me in the studio. And you can join us. You can join this conversation. So you see the number on your screen. You can call 0302-211-701 or 0302-211-702, 703 and 704. And join in the conversation. Tell us what we can do to strengthen our city if you have any solution at all. Mr. Kisley-Hayford,
yes,
borrowing, how does it affect us? Can we ever borrow to show up our city?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's not an option.
No, it's not an option. And that's one of the things I've said. I think I've said it many, many times. You can't borrow your way out of debt, okay? Because whatever you do, you still have to pay the interest on the debt. So you need to get to a point where the amount of money you're bringing in is enough to pay what you're spending and some left at the end of the day. And if you do it properly, you should be able to pay it all off, including the amount of money that you have borrowed. You borrow money so you will achieve a purpose and move things off. You borrow money, typical house example. All this is so simple when you get down to it. Let's say you're a salaried employee. You get 2,000 cedis a month take home at the end of the day. Then you decide it's not enough. You want to go and buy a car. So you go and borrow money.
2,000 buy.
On your, and let's say the car is going to now cost you 1,200. So you're left with 800. There's a wife, there's 2 kids, there's school fees to be paid, there's food every day. Yes, and when you add all of that, that comes up to say maybe some 1,200 cedis. Now you are now, after you bought the car, you only now have 800 cedis left take home. And you have to spend 1,200. So there's 400 deficit every time. You can't keep on finding that deficit. It'll increase as you go forward. So you don't have much of a choice.
We can't borrow our way out.
You can't borrow your way out of it. At some point, the income has to go up and you have to manage your expenses.
Okay, we have Al-Hassan on the line. Hello, Al-Hassan.
Hello, good evening, madam.
Good evening. You're on PM Express.
Yeah, I want to contribute.
Go ahead.
It's good that you are educating us day in, day out. But I don't know. I want to ask Mr. Kisley-Hayford. I don't know about the cedi and the dollar. All the time it will go up and it will come down. So what policy can they put in line? Because they are the backbone of what our Ghana economical decision. What can they put? The measures that they will put. But if the dollar can come into our system, so that our currency will be bigger than the foreign one. When you are looking in most of the African countries, like I knew something about Libya. Libya, no matter how your currency went into Libya, it cannot be over the Libyan currency.
Okay, Al-Hassan.
Why we Ghanaians all the time.
Al-Hassan, I'll ask Mr. Kisley-Hayford to address that one, what we can do to strengthen it. He has said it already, but he will reiterate for you. We also have Baba Kade on the line. Baba, good evening and welcome to PM Express. Hello, Baba.
Hello.
Hello, Baba, go ahead.
Hello.
Baba, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my little voice to the economy or the crisis in Ghana.
Go ahead.
This is just something that we should all understand how my senior man on the street is explaining to the nation. About the nation, what we can do and inherit something for our children's future to benefit. So I will advise the political class to take care of this senior man. All what they say. And then the only thing that I think we can do to survive, we have to create discipline.
Discipline to be disciplined.
The ultimate. Ghana is not a poor country.
Thank you very much, Baba. We also have Zion on the line. Zion.
Yes.
Welcome to PM Express. Go ahead with your submission.
Thank you. This is Zion from Wa.
Go ahead.
Yes, I think I have to introduce my own definition we have 3 areas we have to tackle about the city.
What are they?
One, the government is borrowing too much.
Okay.
And
2.
we need dollars to refinance the loan.
2.
2. We are importing too much. Almost everything. We import everything. And we need dollars.
Okay. 3.
And then 3. The demand and supply.
Okay.
There's so much pressure. People are losing faith about our city.
All right.
So almost everybody wants to hide something for tomorrow.
I see.
So if we can reduce imports, it will save the city.
All right.
If the government will reduce the borrowing, it will at least save the city.
All right.
And then that anxiety, the city is falling, political instability.
You don't like that at
People
all.
will hold the money.
All right. Thank you, Zion. We have Ibrahim also on the line. Hello, Ibrahim.
Hello, good evening.
Ibrahim, go ahead.
Please, I want to urge people like Mr. For to step into the political system and change this nation for us, because we're tired of too much talk in this nation.
Okay.
Talk, no action.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Kingsley Ford will put some action into it.
When you are on the bench and those in the field are not listening, you step in the field.
Okay.
You know, that
He's
can
listening
help
to
the
you.
nation forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Mr. Kingsley Ford may consider that one. Hello, Frank.
Hello, my sister.
Go ahead.
I'm calling from Sunyane.
Okay.
You see, these days, the government and its apparatus, they are consuming a lot. That is why even the second lady, when it comes to Sunyane, you see there are many cars or vehicles are following her. And that one contributes that. So if you're able to cut our coat according to our clothes, I believe it's going to help the economy. It's going to help the economy very well.
Okay. Thank you, Frank.
Mr.
Thank you, Frank. We'll check their consumption. Hello, Abubakar.
Yeah, hello.
Welcome, this PM Express. Go ahead.
Yeah. In fact, I just want to make an input to your discussion. And it's all about all these experts come to this particular station or stations to educate us about what is happening. But I have never heard any of them mention how we will generate income. I have never heard any of them forming group to ensure that we take taxes from our people so that we'll be able to grow. We have never heard any of them saying that the workers we employ into our various offices are the problem.
Okay.
Because we always relate the problem to the politician. That is the reason why we are where we are up to today.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Kingsley Ford, you heard them. About 6 of them. One wants you to be active in politics. Another wants you to educate them. And another says we consume too much.
And do you realize that every one of them had the answers that we've been discussing all the time?
Yes.
And
I'm surprised.
Yes, and that is what reassures me, that the listening public out there is becoming more wise.
Okay.
Or should I say, is it wiser? About the issues that are at stake. The gentleman who called in called Zion.
Yes.
He brought up his
the
3 points. Very, very clear. All right?
Too much borrowing.
Too much imports.
And then demand
and supply. And those are the fundamental issues. Even though demand and supply is a bit too wide, we would have to break it down. And then the other gentleman who called in was Abubakar or somebody says, the problem we have is wastage. Second lady comes in with a whole entourage and so many people, all of them on one trip. It's totally unnecessary. And it is that cost that means that we are not generating enough revenue to be able to manage all the expenses. And that's a classic example, that the government machinery is just too wasteful. So you need to trim it.
You also mentioned corruption before the calls started coming in.
Yes, I did. And that is the bane of our issues here. There's corruption everywhere you go, particularly at the imports, the ports. All right? Too much corruption. Too many people bringing in goods and not paying the right taxes and levies. and therefore everything is depressing.
Are state institutions weak?
Very, very weak, even to the extent that our VAT collection itself is not being done properly. And yet it is the most punitive of all the taxes that we have. Yes. Everybody pays the VAT. If I go and buy a tin of tomatoes, it costs me the same 17.5%. Amma down the line, a Kaya Yo who is carrying things, she goes and buys tomatoes, is the same 17.5%. Okay. So me, the person who has more disposable income, I benefit.
All right.
All right, where that is a lot more punitive down there.
Your final word?
My final word is I think the people of Ghana now are beginning to understand what the issues really are, and I think they are discerning enough. Okay. And the important thing is, when it comes to the only opportunity we have in this country to change who we vote to lead us, we have to make the right decisions, because that also is part of our problem.
Thank you very much.
I'm not going to be that politician.
Okay, he has made that clear that he's not going to be doing that. He's not going to get into active politics. But we've been talking about the cedi, and like he said, we've been talking about the same thing over and over again, and we are hoping someone will listen and do the right thing. This is PM Express. Have a good night.